Welcome my friends back to Marvel Snap, where we are playing Flame or Lame with Gwenpool, the latest and greatest card releasing here as the Battle Pass card this season, headliner if you will of the Deadpool x Wolverine season. 4/6 on reveal, pick a random card in your hand 3 times, give +2 power each time. Oh, it is actually here. This is one of the cards that when it was first revealed, I threw my stamp down and I said this could not reveal or be released with its existing stat line, yet here she is, and holy hand buff. This could finally be what the hand buff archetype has been waiting for. Is she going to be worth your investment as a Battle Pass card? At the end of the video, we are going to reveal that, but first we're going to talk about and break down all of the nuances of her abilities, the best synergies, the best counters, and then we're also going to roll into some of the decks that I think she is going to excel in. Based on the ability text here, we have all of the on reveal suite of synergies, reactivations, extra cards being able to clip on and renew her activations, picking a card in your hand 3 times. Now this can be different cards. It could also, because it's random, be the same card getting hit by multiple buffs. It has the freedom, if you only have 1 card in hand, to throw all 3 buffs on that same card, hopefully in that position, a very carefully chosen card that is going to make amazing use of those +2, or in that case specifically +6 buffs. Let's roll on to the synergies. Overall here, we're seeing a package that at a 4-cost price point is giving us 12 power, 6 immediately on board, and then 6 in hand. Of course, the downside of hand buff is that you have to have the time and energy to be able to get those buffed cards from your hand to the board. And what's amazing here is that we have a whole suite of cards. I'm picking specifically Surfer here as one of the best beneficiaries. Sets of cards that make multiplicative use of buffs. Brood tripling the effectiveness of those buffs. Sebastian Shaw adding his own +2. Mysterio also triples the buffs, and has been a pretty effective card currently in the meta to be able to play within a good card's shell that's rocking the Mockingbird, just being able to throw her down in an energy efficient way. If Mysterio gets hit by a Gwenpool buff, then he is going to grow and scale the power on his illusions and then on the real Mysterio as well. Grandmaster here is representing that suite of on-reveal synergies. I'm picking him as one of the best cards to pair with Gwenpool because if you play Gwenpool on curve on turn 4 and then roll into Grandmaster on turn 5, you will also have space to be able to play a 3-cost card at the same time to maintain tempo, keep on cultivating your hand, and then churn through into a really impactful final turn right after that. Moving on here, we have our next category, which are the doublers. All of these are going to love getting hit by extra buffs. The interesting thing to wrap our head around is how we navigate taking up all of turn 4 to play Gwenpool and then move on with our battle plan while trying to have buffed up these guys with them in hand rather than getting them to the board early and then investing in them there. Of course, Deadpool has return to hand functionality, and Human Torch has excelled in a lot of different lists where it is a move bounce shell, so that you could realistically see him played in the early turns, brought back to hand, buffed by Gwenpool in the mid game, and then reinvested on the final turn. Or honestly, with Human Torch, this is where the doublers just go insane. If Human Torch just gets tagged by Gwenpool once, so he starts as a 1/4, and then on the final turn of the game, you play Iron Fist, Human Torch, Ghost Spider. That means your Human Torch is going to be a 16 power. It's going to be a 3 energy, 18-20 total power, and that's just with a Gwenpool tagging the Human Torch 1 time. Sign me up. That is an enormous punch-up. The Dakin is quite interesting as well because he can also slot into the Surfer synergy. We're able to double dip in a couple different archetypes over there because of how well diversified the 3-cost price point is in Snap. Deadpool, I'm also seeing a couple synergies here with potentially a Phoenix Force deck, but the Phoenix Force deck is really tight to be able to fit things in. I don't know if it can afford running Gwenpool. Destroy specifically has Deadpool and so many other cards that are able to carry their buffs through being destroyed, and it's really a combo with Venom that is the best move, where Gwenpool could buff something to hand, either Deadpool, Wolverine, Sabretooth, any of these guys, and then they come to the board, get eaten by Venom that preserves the buffs onto a new body, and then they regenerate, get stronger, or just return to hand as free, and you can keep on playing from there. Challenging again is that the Destroy decks have largely been figured out as highly effective without Gwenpool in the list. I don't know if she's offering enough to really punch up. What is fascinating is that she could also do really great things with Nimrod if you're able to put a couple buffs onto that guy and then wait and hold your destructions until the final turn. Pop, pop, a big fat Nimrod bursting around could really shock the opponents and be a bit of a change-up because Nimrod actually dodges some of the control effects that normal Destroy lists are really susceptible to. Final category that I see amazing potential of synergy with Gwenpool is Discard. Discard is able to get around of the disadvantage of the hand buff archetype in that if we buff a lot of these cards, we can just knock them to the board for free with other combo effects. The Swarm becoming free, Proxima Midnight jumping straight to the board, Wolverine jumping straight to the board. We can go Gwenpool on 4, MODOK on 5, boom. The buffs have been generated and then they are in play, and that could be the energy pump up that Discard was needing. Discard is such, it's a very capped archetype. It has this hard ceiling of how much power it generates, and either that ceiling is high enough to make it a meta dominant staple, or it is too low and then it just completely falls out of favor. And Gwenpool could be the latest punch up that it needed to be able to stay relevant. I am definitely going to be testing this list a lot. Now the trap cards. These are pieces that might appear like they have solid synergies with Gwenpool, but I really don't think is going to be worth the effort to make their decks. Moon Girl, someday I'm going to have to stop bullying her. But the idea of being able to duplicate a buffed up hand obviously has an appeal. Her playstyle has just always felt too slow and too greedy to really pay out. The Nakia is representing compounding hand and deck buff styles. These cards are cards that have already been tried and found to be not too effective, so I think in our deck building we want to just run Gwenpool and decks that are also effective even if you don't hit the Gwenpool, but we don't need to double down and try and play a Koye into the Nakia into the Gwenpool to just go insane with this. We just want to have Gwenpool do her thing and let all of our other cards be a little bit more effective. And Black Panther is here. He is one of the doublers that I called out as being great on getting additional buffs. I just think that Black Panther specifically is a little bit too high investment, too high risk, and we've seen what he does. Yes, you can Black Panther Zola. Yes, that will win you some games. No, I don't think it's going to be able to stand up in the current meta where Shang and Shadow King are both out there hunting cards exactly like him. And the enemies. If you are seeing a lot of Gwenpool, if you're not picking her up, but you know that you want to counter the people who are testing her as they climb to infinite right on day one, of course you got the Shadow King and the Shang. Shadow King able to turn off all of those lovely buffs, which are the Gwenpool deck's lifeblood, and Shang-Chi able to smack down any cards that as Icarus fly too close to that 10 power threshold. The Scorpion is a fun call out here because I am assuming these Gwenpool decks are going to be running a lot of compounding power synergistic cards, and Scorpion starting them out at a lower threshold can be absolutely devastating. I mean, my goodness, if you hit a Deadpool, oh, you have won the match right there, my friend, right there. Cosmo is blocking all of the on-reveal tricks, which I also think Gwenpool decks are going to pretty heavily invest in. Destroy, Discard, Surfer are all on-reveal based lists. Black Widow trying to prevent them from drawing the combo cards that'll really make use of the extra buffs, and Black Bolt knocking buffed cards out of hand. All sound pretty solid, though more on the range of soft counters as well. We've done it. We've analyzed her effects from all angles. Flame or lame, is she worth your investment? And the verdict is she's a flame. Gwenpool looks awesome, and she finally seems like a punchy enough effect to bring hand buff forward. As we look at these cards that have such multiplicative synergies with the buffs, I'm getting really excited because Surfer is just right on the cusp of being a dominant deck already. And honestly, that Mysterio, good cards, Mockingbird list, being able to get an extra buff thrown out there with the Gwenpool, I think could be incredibly fun as well. Throwing in a 3-key rating here, though, I've locked myself into calling these ratings key rankings. Obviously, she's a Battle Pass card, so I'm not putting her all the way up at a 4. I think that she is going to perform a little bit better than Gilgamesh did last season. And guys, remember, Gilgamesh had an entire week where Zoo was the deck, albeit that was after a Gilgamesh buff. I think that Gwenpool is landing in my initial theory crafting gut feeling check here in a fairly balanced place. Her ability seems good, but not too good. I don't think that she's going to need tweaking right out of the gate. I don't think she needs a buff. I don't think she needs a nerf. She has a really high ceiling on what she is going to be able to do. That comes with a deck building and play pattern challenge of figuring out how to get the most out of this card, and then with the randomness thrown in and the downside of if you play her off curve, she's going to have a lot less impact. I think that all balances her out, and I can't wait to be bringing her to the game board in the set of decks that I'm about to show off. Number 1 is Surfin' Gwenpool. My goodness, as we just roll across the list here, there are so many cards that love lapping up all those Gwenpool buffs, and the Makari could either pick up a buff and then drop to the board for free, or just drop to the board and then thin our hand down to keep the more desirable buff targets there for Gwenpool to be able to activate off of. I'm curious to see if Sarah ends up being a little bit too greedy, and if we thin down even more to trying to play cards on turn 5 and set up turn 6, or if we just use the energy cheat in the Sarah that has always been a mainstay in this list. But man, so Shaw, Dakin, Brood, we got the Absorbing Man to throw down as well. Forge in here, Killmonger activating the Dakin, popping the Nova. I'm going in with Fastos. I know I said that the other hand buff and deck buff styles like the Okoye and the Kia are not quite it, but I have enjoyed Fastos in this deck, and so I'm going to run him to begin with, though you have so many different tech cards that you can bring to play with a Surfer list. It could be as the meta shifts into something that Fastos or Sarah gets cut to be a counter to a common mainstay deck that I see a lot of. Heck, if Arishem is everywhere, I'm just going to have to run the Darkhawk, and that's probably going to take Sarah's spot. And might feel a little scummy, but I'll do whatever it takes to hit infinite. Next up, the discard team is all assembled. Proxima, Midnight Swarm, Apocalypse, Dakin, all loving grabbing those delicious buffs. I have actually not brought in the Wolverine, even though I called that out earlier on in the slide. This list is trying to leverage Super Giant as a tech that I have seen used a little bit to allow you some really creative uses of MODOK and Dracula play patterns to make sure that you're drawing. You have maximum time to draw the combos that you're really looking for. This one is a bit of an art to play to because Swarm getting caught in hand with Apocalypse on the final turn MODOK is not what you want, but overall I still love the power that this can produce, and Supergiant can slow down a number of decks as well by preventing that mid-game setup turn revealing. If it's an on-reveal deck, it can really slow down the combos that they want to put together. So this is where I want to start, but obviously there's a number of other directions that we can take it, with X-23 and Wolverine also being good call-outs as things that we could add in here. So there's Gwenpool in all of her glory, and you know we're going to be testing her right on release. YouTube and Twitch. Tune in to the Teddy Ninja channel, subscribe down below, leave me a comment if I missed out on anything in the analysis, or just let me know what deck you are most excited to be testing Gwenpool out within. Till next time, thank you guys for watching. Keep on snapping.